Hi everyone, my name is Oathkeeper. You can call me Oath. I actually figured since I went and saw Coraline in theaters for the anniversary that I would make my first video on that. I'll be going over like a lot of the main story details that may have been missed or just don't really get noticed, hidden things, stuff like that. First off, Coraline is a movie that initially came out in February of 2009. It is a dark fantasy film stop motion animation combo that was written by Henry Selick, and it was based on the original book by Neil Gaiman, also called Coraline. The film itself just runs over an hour and a half. There is in the anniversary screening at the very end after the final credits and everything, where you kind of go over the recreation because it was remastered. I do believe that the original Coraline had at the end of it, instead of this segment, it was how it was animated based on the ending title sequence of Coraline, I'm pretty sure. So Coraline does have a little bit of a star-studded voice cast. There's Dakota Fanning as Coraline, Terry Hatcher as Mama Mel and the Beldam. There's Keith David as the Cat, Ian McShane as Mr. B, Jennifer Saunders as Spink, and even John Hodgman as Daddy Charlie. Hell, even the film's director, Henry Selick, was the voice of one of the friends from Michigan. This film is so cute, but also built up this odd unease of which I know everyone felt. The way the film gives this sense of isolation and disconnect from those around you, the feeling of enticement followed later by, being shown that it was all just a manipulation tactic, the music, the imagery, the connecting forces surrounding everything. It's just, the film is wonderful in the way that it places everything, in my opinion at least. The movie opens with chilling music as these needle-based hands starts opening and gutting and changing this doll that was a different doll to a new doll. The new doll matches Coraline Jones, our main character, who is an 11-year-old who's forced to move with her parents, Mel and Charlie, from Pontiac, Michigan, all the way over to the Pink Palace, which is a house converted to apartments type of apartment complex. Her parents did move there to work on their gardening catalog, which is funny because even later in the movie, they comment on it themselves, but they don't go outside like that. Anyway, Coraline decides to go dowsing. She meets the cat and a boy named Wybie, who ends up letting us know that his Grams doesn't actually let children live at the Pink Palace, so it's kind of interesting that she's there. Small note though, his full name is Wyborn, and Coraline just eats him up. When his grandmother's calling him back to the house, he was already annoying her, so she literally says, "Oh, I definitely heard someone. Why were you born?" Like, calm down, okay? Not demure. That aside, Coraline was looking for a well, which it turns out the fairy ring that she's standing on is actually the well. Wybie ends up telling her, hey, that's it. If you jump too hard, you're going to fall in. And she's like, what? And he ends up showing her, yeah, it's a well. He ends up saying something really interesting that the stories say that if you fall in it and you look up, you can just see the stars even if it's daytime, which is kind of a nod to the later parts of the film. It's very interesting, very niche. Afterwards, she's at home. She tries to interact with her parents because her mom wouldn't let her go out in the rain, but as she's trying to interact with them, they're constantly working, and Coraline is a child, so anytime she tries to talk to them, they see it as interrupting their work or being annoying and that they don't have time, so she's kind of just told to go do something, which it's a bit of a neck wringer for me because I grew up with very similar trauma, but that's for another day. Wybie also gives Coraline the doll that we see made at the beginning of the movie. He found it in his grandma's stuff, so it's also like a little bit of a interesting setup there. Coraline has this really cute montage. There's a stubborn carpet, there's dirty water in her hair. It's really whimsical and kind of plays into that child side, and I, even now watching it, was just like, I want to do that. Like, I don't know why, it's just, it felt like being a kid again. So anyway, it all comes to an end when she ends up finding a room that has a door behind some wallpaper. She ends up pushing her mom into coming and opening it, and behind that door is bricks. It's literally bricks. Well, until nighttime, when a mouse leads her into it and she actually finds another world with her other mother and her other father. The creepy thing is, they all have buttons for eyes. An odd find indeed, Coraline. So she has dinner at the other world, and compared to the real life mush that we see with a cute song from Dad, it is a godsend to her. She just gets mesmerized. They're offering stuff that she can't get at home, if you catch what I'm saying. Over the course of the rest of the film, Coraline pops between both worlds. She meets the other neighbors, she has delicious food, she gets vibrant shows, there's a beautiful yard, and it's all amazing and tantalizing, and it's meant to pull her in more, up until the point that Other Mother asks Coraline to let her sew buttons into her eyes. Yikes. In this world, she also finds out that the cat can talk, and there is only one key to the door that she's been going in and out of, so that's lovely. So Coraline eventually sees the Other Mother's true personality. She gets locked in this mirror where she meets 3 ghost girls, one of which is the twin sister to YB's Grams. They are creepy. The way they're animated is just creepy, and I love it. It adds this, like, even more surreal uncanniness to the film itself, which it's already a little uncanny because it's stop motion, but the way that they're done is just fantastic. They end up warning her about the Other Mother, who is actually known as the Beldam, and she ends up finding out they can't leave because the Other Mother has their eyes, which is actually like a symbolism for their soul, which is why she wants to sew the eyes on, because every creature that we see has button eyes. Every single person and creature in the film that's in the other world has buttons for eyes, so they are some type of creature that was made by the Beldam, or another being that was probably done the same way, souls captured, buttons and eyes, and then transformed to match whatever. So she ends up escaping the mirror thanks to other YB. He ends up scaring the crap out of her because he's in this mask and he's like pulling her out like he's kidnapping her, but she ends up seeing that the reason that he wore the mask is because Other Mother sewed his mouth shut because he frowned earlier. She eventually gets home and ends up finding out that Charlie and Mel are missing. Oh my god, what is she gonna do? Like, what's going on? Where are they? What happened? Honestly though, I'm laughing, but this part of the film was kind of sad. I literally can't handle the crying scene because it hurts my soul to this day. I literally teared up in the theater seeing her laid in front of characters of her parents crying. Like, it hurt. She cried herself to sleep. Like, it was sad. So Coraline ends up going over to her neighbors, Spink and Forcible, to let them know, hey, my parents are missing. Like, what am I to do? And they are more worried about getting to a theater or something that they bought the tickets for months in advance. But eventually they do help her. They give her this beautiful little stone with a hole in the center. And the stone is kind of looking like malachite in a way. It's very interesting. I feel like it was definitely a purposeful choice to make it look that way, but I really liked it. And the stone, we end up learning, is good for bad things sometimes. Wait, no, it's good for lost things. No, bad things? Lost? Either way, she returns and finds that the Beldam, the world's different. The Beldam has a little bit of a different form and ends up swallowing the key. And Coraline decides, thanks to the help of the cat, that she's going to play a game with her, because we know Beldam loves games. It's even hinted at ahead of time, and the cat even confirms it. I would say it's sort of like in Doctor Who. The Toymaker and Maestro are manifestations of, fun and games and music, and they have to live by those rules while in the universe because it's connected to them in a core level. For her, obviously, that's not her power, but she's connected to playing games. There's some type of fascination in it. Maybe it's the thrill. Maybe she knows that she can win and just will always try to go for it. It's a very interesting choice, especially considering she believes so heavily that she's going to win that she's just like, yeah, that's fine. Let's do it. After giving Coraline a small riddle, she ends up discovering, oh, I just have to go through those 3 areas that I've been through before, to keep the film small. Again, it's stop motion. That's a lot to make a lot of sets and stuff, but it is a very clever idea as well, because each of those worlds, we end up seeing like little tidbits about the world that are just off. And there's even like connections to the real world that are just kind of interesting, like Mr. B's apartment, when we get to see it in the film versus in the other world, it's actually very mirrored, and most of the world is mirrored, so it's kind of cute. So after trudging through the 3 areas, she ends up, fighting the other people, and she grabs the souls. When she does, that area turns this grayish white, kind of like stone, and once she grabs the last one with the help of the cat, the rest of the world ends up deteriorating, and it's in this kind of like geometric like fashion. It's just, honestly, it shows you that the world was created and structured and weaved by the other mother, and it's such a nice detail. So as the world starts disappearing, Coraline has to run inside. She goes through a deteriorating other house, like the wallpaper's folding up, things are crusting, cracking. Like, you can tell Beldam's losing her powers because she is technically giving these souls to Coraline, even if she might not plan on it. She ends up going through the house to the room with the door, which is now completely bug themed, and Beldam is waiting, and she's in what I believe is the closest thing to her natural form. She's now arachnid, like she's cracking like the walls, so you can see that her power's diminishing. She's got the needle hands again. She's got this really, like, her neck was already elongated, but it looked even more elongated. It was actually really interesting to see it, and the bug-like properties that we see throughout the film just really come together for her right there. She has 4 legs. It's just really interesting. So as she's trying to find her parents, Coraline's told by one of the Soul's kids, I believe it's the twin of the grandmother, that ends up saying, "Miss, she's not going to let you truly win. Like, you're going to have to think of a way out of this." And Coraline's like, "Okay, I'll do that." So she devises this plan to make Beldam unlock the door by saying her parents are behind there. And meanwhile, while the Beldam's unlocking it, she finds them up on the mantle that's right next to her inside of a snow globe. She throws the cat at the Beldam, who rips the Beldam's eyes out, and then the room ends up getting stomped down into this hanging spider web thing that sounds metallic. I really, really like the detail in it, because Coraline's bag gets stuck, and she ends up pulling it, and it ends up making that wavy metal noise, that I don't know. But the Beldam ends up running after her, and Coraline barely makes it and slams the Beldam's hand in the door with the help of the souls of the kids. So Coraline ends up getting into her room. She sets the kids free by putting their souls, their eyes, into, or rather under, the pillow that she's laying on, and she has this dream where, again, they're beautifully animated. This time it's not eerie, it's quick. It is a little unsettling because I guess it's meant to be that way because they're now ghost angels, but it's very cute. They tell her that the Beldam's still after her. She's after the key, and she's gonna need to get rid of it, which Coraline decides to do, and sneaks out after waking up to go ahead and throw it in the well where she met Wybie. Unbeknownst to her, the Beldam's hand actually ended up escaping through the door and follows her and nearly gets the key back, choking her in the process, but luckily real Wybie comes over and ends up helping her out with it. They end up crushing the hand with a rock and throwing it down the well, and the film kind of ends that storyline there. And at the end, we see Coraline bringing lemonade to all her neighbors and her parents inside the garden as everyone's planting things, except Mr. B. He was planting beets. So she ends up having Wybie bring his grandmother, and she tells her everything that happened. And we don't get to see it, but the way that they talk, it sounds like it's going to be a good conversation, Cute ending, nice ending to the story, very, very happy. It's not bittersweet. It's actually lightly sweet. There's a hint of, like, maybe something could still be happening, because the cat at the end ends up walking through another portal, showing that there is still another world that exists, or at least other mothers still exist in that other world, so she may try to find another way to do all this. So I absolutely love this film. There's so many hidden things, cute moments, details that are just really interesting, and you can see the purpose in a lot of things. For instance, the opening portion has the doll that's, getting unstuffed and restuffed. The doll, there is a solo man singing the whole time, and then suddenly when they cut open the mouth of the doll, there's kids singing. Very, very demure, very mindful, connected, really nice, okay? It really shows that, like, that was a release. Speaking of the singing, all the music's gibberish. Literally all of it's gibberish. It's meant to be this kind of sense of another language. It's supposed to feel foreign and uneasy. It was made originally by a French composer, but they purposely made it so that it's gibberish. They wanted us to feel uneasy. They wanted us to feel out of place. Like, I can kind of place that. It's kind of familiar, but I don't know what's going on. That's what they were going for. So Wybie is introduced with his face covered, like I said earlier, and later on, Wybie ends up covering his face with a mask, which is actually made out of one of the oven mitts in the kitchen. But it's because Beldam's sewn his mouth shut and he didn't want her to see, which is really like a nice type of callback. Also in the film, Coraline held the dowsing rod with both hands. However, she only has a rash on her left. We end up learning from the other mother when she heals that left hand that poison oak rashes are healed by mud. But what you kind of don't really notice is that Wybie shook her hand and she ends up wiping it off. It was her right hand and it was mud. So Wybie inadvertently healed her rash on that side. So the Beldam's form, like I said before, is hinted at multiple times, including the windows in the real world have this like bug, tall, skinny, weird, pointy, lengthy, lanky motif to it. She gets a dress later on in the film that has these like not pod-like, but it looks kind of like scales. It's very bug-like from the back. It bounces and moves kind of like one of those bugs in like A Bug's Life. It was interesting. And there's also a scene in the film where Coraline's like, what rain? After they tell her to go play in the mud in the rain, she's like, what rain? And then lightning strikes and then rain starts. The lightning is literally Beldam's little needle hands, and it's such nice detail. And there's also wallpaper in the real world with bugs all on it behind the blue boy in the room with the door. It's just cute details and a lot of foreshadowing that was really nicely put in. So the Beldam also always hums when she's cooking, and she's literally humming that nonsense soundtrack. So it kind of brings more unease and also shows that you kind of can't trust her. Forcible and Spink have these dogs that are taxidermied in the real world, and they're taxidermied to be angels. And in the other world, during the trials, they're actually transformed into bats to give that kind of more of that dynamic mirroring motif. Real world, they're angels. Other world, they're bats. It kind of shows Other Mother might not have good intentions. Rather, at that time, we knew Other Mother did not have good intentions, so, you know. Charlie and Other Charlie are also introduced in the exact same way, just one in front of a computer, the other in front of a piano. The interesting connection too is that her dad is controlled by work. He has to continue writing. He has to continue staying on that computer so that he can write the information, build the catalog and everything, while her other dad, both of them are willing, but her other dad is willingly controlled by a piano so that he could play the piano. So on to the three ghost children. They have a few, and they are one of my favorite parts of the film. They have their portraits in the dining room behind Coraline whenever she's sitting in that specific spot. They're on the side of her. Their frame rate as ghosts is dropped. They're clipped to, like, I think half the rate, so that's why they look kind of weird and uncanny and on edge. And their mouths are also stuck as ghosts. And one of them is stuck in this scary, open, like, agape, horrified face, which is crazy because the other father also ends up saying when they were talking about sewing in the eyes, it's so sharp you won't feel a thing. If it's so sharp, she will feel a thing, and clearly they did as well. The ghosts are also in an angelic form towards the end, and the wings specifically are filmed at a rate that's double the rate, or it's just slightly more of a frame rate than the rest, which is really interesting and also gives them this otherworldly vibe. Other Mother also does not eat. The only time we see her eat something is these chocolate bugs, which they're chocolate beetles, and I want to try one of them so bad. Like, it's terrible that they move and stuff. I would probably be grossed out by that, but the crunch, the gooiness inside just looked delicious. I don't know why. I really want to try it. The Other Mother lies a few times in the film, but one of the ones that sticks out to me the most is that she even kind of comments on that she'd be jealous, but she literally asks if Coraline wants different colored buttons and that it would be fine and that she can have them. She goes over a list of colors and then says that she might get jealous. But the only other people with other colored eyes are Spink and Forcible. They have these like eyeshadowed type of eyes in the other world, which is interesting because it's very clear and blatant that she's lying. Coraline, other than them, have not met anybody else whose eyes are colored different. It's just interesting to me because Beldam was blatantly lying and blatantly manipulating, but just like we don't see it when we're being manipulated or gaslit until after the fact, Coraline couldn't see it. She knew something was up, but she didn't really like stick to those feelings. There were a few times during the film where she was like, I gotta go, or I should go to bed, especially when that part was happening. But it really just shows that the Other Mother's done this a lot, and that she's a master manipulator, and that she's gonna do whatever she can to try to get the food, essentially. The garden as well of Coraline's face is actually an interesting combination of representation of her and the Beldam. Physically, it looks like her. It's also beautiful and meant to be eye-catching, but it's also dangerous because it literally has those pitcher plants that melt whatever goes inside of it, snapdragons, which represent deception, harmful frogs, a praying mantis. You know, it's kind of funny to have symbolism of a creature that bites its mate's head off, and essentially for the Beldam, whatever food that she's getting, she's trying to, you know, she could always just try to take their souls, but she develops connection and love and pulls them in and makes them want to be with her and part of her as the way to manipulate them to get the food. So it's kind of a combination of those two things, and it's very interesting that they chose that. And they also did the same thing with the webs. There is webbing, and the Beldam being a spider lady it's just an interesting and often used motif. Like at the beginning, Beldam's little spinner wheel, the sewing machine, ends up having dust all over it because obviously it hasn't been used for a while, but it's a reference to her being a spider, needle, bug creature thing. And the portal between the worlds, as time goes on, it gets covered in it, and even at the end she ends up coming out covered in cobwebs because it's all that just surrounds that. She had to crawl through the webbing to get out of the trap, you know? Speaking of which, there are so many hidden artifacts and details in the walls from the previous kids of that portal between the worlds. It's very interesting how they put it all together. So that's my first video. That's my go over of Coraline. I could probably have put more detail in, but I feel like I don't want to put too long of a video for my first video, but I do really like the film, so I did want to put in what I felt really needed to be gone over and the things that I loved that stuck out to me and that I noticed with my first and second watching. Obviously this wasn't my second watching, this was like my 8th watching, but it's a really nice film. I really like it, and I want to do more stuff like this on my channel. So going forward, that's probably what it's going to be. I don't know if I'll be uploading once a month, twice a month, once every other month, but since I'm just starting, I'll try to go for once a month, but I can't guarantee anything. Anyway, I'm Oath. That was it. Peace out.
They're good for bad things sometimes.
No, they're good for lost things.
It's bad things, Miriam.
Lost things, April.
Bad?
Lost.
Bad things.
Lost.
Bad.
Lost.
Bad.
Lost.
Bad.
Lost! Oh, my twitchy, witchy girl, I think you are so nice. I give you bowls of porridge and I give you bowls of ice cream.
Ah, for a horse!
Put them back.